Okay, so in the last video what we did is that we went through these two commands here. We went through grid template columns and grid template rows. And these commands allow you, after displaying your website as the grid layout, they allow you to determine how many columns and how many rows your website is going to have, and how big or how wide those columns and rows are going to be. But obviously this is not enough to set up a website exactly how you want it to be set up, but we're getting close to that point. So the problem though is that we don't have a way of taking these divs and stretching them across columns and across rows, okay? And the command that we're going to cover in this particular video is how we're going to do that. So the command is grid-template-areas. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up a new window in my browser, and I'm going to look for some examples of layouts that I can try to copy using this command. So I'm going to look for CSS layout examples. So I'm going to check this website here, and we have here right here at the top we have something that we can attempt to use to do this, okay? And the first, well, not the first necessarily, but we have a pretty good layout here. We have a header, we have a navigation menu, we have content, main content, content, and finally footer, okay? So we have 6 divs here. Whereas on the file that I have been working on, we have 8 divs, okay? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just take the remaining 2 divs and I'm going to stack them on the bottom just below the footer, okay? And one other thing I want you to take note of is that these divs shown here all have space around them, okay? And this CSS grid command allows you to do this with a fairly easy command. So I'm going to add this command in between my grid template rows command and my grid template areas command. And this command is called grid-gap, okay? And you can set this in pixels. So I'll put this at, let's say, 10 pixels. I'm going to save that. I'm going to check to see what it looks like. Good. So we can see here that all of my divs now have a gap around them, okay? So that's a grid gap command, okay? So I'm going to go back to this layout and I'm going to look at it. So the header stretches right across the top of the page. Then below that you have the navigation menu stretching across the page. Then you have this row here with 3 columns. So for this particular layout, because this section has 3 columns, I'm going to have 3 columns set up with my grid template columns. And if we look at the rows, we see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, okay? So this is a 3 column by 4 row layout, okay? So let's set that up. So I have four columns set up here right now, so I'm going to have to change this. And something else that we have to take note of is the sizes of our rows and columns in relation to each other, okay? So if I look here, I can see that this first column here is approximately a quarter in width to my main content middle column here, okay? And I'm going to use what we used last time. I'm going to use fractionals again to allot this space. And so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to come here and I'm going to put 1 FR, 4 FR, 1 FR. So how this works to divide the space in the way that I want it here is that if you add all of these together, it'll be a 6, it'll be 6 FR. And as I said, from eyeballing it, this column looks to be about 1/4 of the size of this column. So if we say that this is 4 of this column, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? Because this column is about the same size as this column. So we have a 6. We have something that can be divided into 6. So that's what the fractionals allow you to do. That's what the FRs here allow you to do. So I have space that has to be divided into 6, and one of my columns has to get the lion's share of that. So that will be 4 fractionals of that, because that's approximately 4 times the size of one of the other columns, and the other 2 columns are equal in size. Okay, so that's how I made this determination here. So that's that. And now in terms of the rows, now we have 4 rows, and the top row looks to be about 200 pixels, so I'm going to put that 200 pixels. The second looks to be about half that, so about 100 pixels. The row here that our content is in, that appears to be about, I would say, 600 pixels, so 600. And I'm not doing this exact, I'm just eyeballing this, just assuming the sizes. And finally, the footer here seems to be about 120, so I'm going to put this at 120 pixels. And I'm going to add 2 additional rows because, as I said, we have 8 divs, while this has 6 divs, okay? So I'm going to add an additional 120 px, so good. So we have 6 rows here, okay? So we have the 4 defined here, and the additional 2 for the remaining divs that I'm going to have left behind, okay? So that is our columns and our rows set up. So if I save this and I refresh it, let's see what happens. Okay, so the problem is that we have not been able to assign the space properly. Okay, it has set itself up in terms of the distances we want, but we have not been able to stretch divs across different parts of the page, and we're going to do that now. So to do that, I have to use this grid template areas command. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to start setting up space. So I'm going to say header, header, header. Okay. So what happens is that on each line you set up a row. Okay. So this is the first row, and if I come back to the layout here, the first row just has one div going right across it. So what you do is that you put some sort of word to identify that div in every column. Okay, so you have 3 columns, so you have to put header 3 times here to fill up the space going right across the top. I have to do the same thing here for the next div, because the next div is following the same pattern. So you have the navigation menu, so that's going right across also. So this is my second row, so I'll call this nav. Good. And now we have our content row here now. So I'm going to put one as content. So that'll be the first one. Next one I will call main. And the last one I will call content 2. Okay. Good. So that's our third row, which is here. And this has 3 distinct columns, and that's why I had to put 3 distinct names here. Okay. So let's go on to the next one. So the next one is the footer. So I'll put that as footer, 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 because that's stretching right across. Okay. And then finally the last 2 I'll just put as extra, extra, extra. Call the last one extra 2, extra 2, extra 2. Good. Okay. So that is my grid template area setup. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to assign the space, and to do that I have to call the IDs of my individual divs and assign it using a command. Okay. So my first one, I know my first one had the ID of header. Okay, so now I'm going to put the command to assign this particular area to the header, and to do that we put grid dash area, and then we put header. Good. And I want one for my next div. So my next div is nav. So I'm going to assign this an area as well. So I want this to be, so grid area, grid dash area is nav. Good. Because I have nav here as my second row. Good. And then I want one for sidebar. So this one now will be grid dash area content. Good. I want one now for content. And this one would be grid dash area is, this would be main. Good. Let me just check just to be sure. So good. I had header, nav, sidebar, content, then content 1. So content 1 will be next. So hashtag content 1 grid dash area is to be content 2. Good. Then content 2 grid dash area is to be our footer. Content, oh oops, didn't put any hashtag content 3, and this would be grid dash area, and this would be extra, and finally our footer would be grid dash area extra 2. Good. So let's see what happens now. That's everything accounted for. Okay, save, come back here, refresh, and we have it in the same layout. So let me show you. So I'm going to bring this out as a separate window. I'm going to put this side by side. Good. So we have our header at the top. We have our navigation menu here. And then in the middle, we have this row that has the content here, main content, then content again, footer, and then this would just be our extra divs here. Okay. So we see now how we were able to assign space pretty easily using this command. Okay. We haven't really done that much, and we have such a powerful way of controlling how our website looks.